Hi, everyone. Erín Moure here, and I'm back to read you the third story that I wrote down. I finally had a bit of a chance and wrote it down. I'm not really sure about its structure, or again, it's one of those stories that doesn't go anywhere, but that's kind of a good thing in this case. I'll read it for you. It's called Looking Back. I'd see my mom from behind her, always from behind her, as if she were headed away from me, and she would look back at me amused, bemused. I used to ask myself, who is this woman? I knew her so well, and yet why did I scarcely know her? There was no way I could enter truly into what she was thinking and doing. And her expressions. She looked back, amused. Oh, she's so long gone. I can't ask her now. Why do I hardly know you? The story could be like that, but I can't ask her. Instead, it's in pictures where I find the times where she is grinning, holding up something like cheese and crackers on a saucer, maybe, or getting into the car with my father. And when she looks back, she has this exuberant joy. One thing I do know is the fact that she's looking back means she's ahead of me and not behind me. It's me behind her, following her. And she knows it. She knows I'm there. And she turns back, and there I am. Mom, I hardly know you, but your gaze creates me. In the car, surrounded by light, getting into the car at 36th Avenue on the passenger side and looking sideways and back to me behind the car. She's carrying a side plate with food on it and eating. And that other image of her from the side, not taken by me though. She's walking across a log with a yellow pack on her back, higher than her, and she's focused on not falling into the rush of water. Or in that snapshot where she stopped forever, crossing a slope of yellow aspens in a blue jacket of fall. I love you so much. Part of that, the joy of that love for me is that you were the person, the whole person. You weren't just my mom. You were a mystery, or just opaque to me. I don't know. Licence opacité. You exemplified it. That's where I learned from you first that it's a right we have as humans to not be obliged to transparency, to explanation. Especially women have to struggle for this right. The colonized, too, have to struggle for it. It is not to us that the right comes as a given. It started when I was too small even to be a little kid, which we said is one word, little kid, as opposed to a big kid. But I had learned walking and could open the back screen door by reaching my arms up over my head. I'd walk into the landing and look way up the 2 steps into the kitchen, and they'd be there talking. Why are these my parents? Who are they? And then my mom. How did she come to live in the same house as my dad? What kind of chance did that actually have of happening? Why were we all living together in this house, us? Who was this woman? She was my mom. All my life with her, I called her Mom. Other people called her Mary. She called herself Mim. So I call her Mim now, too, in recognition. She wasn't just my mom. Being my mom was just one part of her. It wasn't a big thing. Something else was big. When she turned around, it made her laugh. This thing that was big was around me, perhaps, like a halo or scene, but it wasn't me. And I followed her. And I followed it too, the scene, the halo. Who was the I that her backward look created? What was I doing? Clearly, I was taking her picture, holding up a camera and not a phone, a compact camera of the simplest fabrication, an apparatus made only for taking pictures. And we called them pictures, not photographs. It was an apparatus with which you took images that you couldn't see at the time, that you only saw later or much later, removed from the incident by days, weeks, months, sometimes by years, because we didn't take that many pictures. There she was, in front of the viewfinder, and something about taking a picture in itself says, smile, makes that demand so curious. Perhaps that's why she's smiling. She looks amused, amused by this me. Who is this me? This I she is creating with her gaze. Was I always there? Or was I only there after she looked at me? I was born from her, yet only became me when she saw me. I realize now that a lot of these images have to do with the car, the family car. We only ever had one car at a time, and we called it the car. And my dad would get in the driver's seat and my mom in the passenger seat, and she'd look back at us. Were we sitting properly and still? There were no seat belts, so squirming was common. And with three kids nearly the same age stuffed in a closed space, well, elbows are liable to fly. If she'd been driving, maybe she wouldn't have been able to look back. She'd have been like my dad, looking ahead, yelling at us sometimes, smoking, but always having to look ahead, or if back via the rear view, it was to glance past us, beyond the car, without ever turning back to us. My mother later did get her own car, a brown 1975 Valiant sedan. She kept it for years and still had it in the late 80s when I finally obtained my own driver's license. But the brakes on that car, always funny. Whenever I took the wheel and drove and touched the brake, it would jolt us both forward, and she'd say, easy on the brakes. I'm barely touching them, I'd say back, and she'd say, that's not true. Eventually, it seems after decades of following her, and at times being recognized with her grin and laughter, I did catch up with her. By then, I was the only one driving the blue Plymouth Grand Voyager that she'd traded the Valiant for a few years prior, so that she could nap in her vehicle without having to stick her feet out the side window. There's a picture of that. I remember sitting beside her on the bed, a little crook between her clavicle, and her neck was full up with water, and I'd dab it and dry it, sitting beside her. She'd be looking down then, not back, pausing. She wasn't miserable, just thoughtful, even through pain, nausea, thoughtful. In the afternoon, we'd lie down together on the little bed and snooze. She'd say, I'm looking out the window at the shapes in the clouds. The shapes were animals, of course. My mom believed in animals. It was the animals that she followed when I was following her. That was one of the last times we were beside each other, so close, me touching her clavicle. Back when time itself was drawing to a close. I loved her so much. Looking after her only taught me more love. There's only this moment. There's no other. What are you doing here? Someone is looking back for you too. Go.